Good morning, everyone. As Darlene here with GMIST, I just want to welcome you all this morning. Today, GMIST is partnering with Festival Events Ontario, and our host today is Debbie Mann. And I'll hand it over to you. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us again, Darlene. We love doing these sessions with GMIST, and I learned so much from them with all our guests that come on, our speakers. We're pleased to have Delores MacAdam join us. Delores it works for the City of Ottawa, has run multiple events for the city, as well as run the Stewart Park Festival in her hometown, Perth, Ontario. And she comes with a wealth of information, teaches at International Festivals and Events Association. So she is a wonderful resource and a great person for us to have here today. Dolores, thanks for
Thank you,
joining us.
Debbie. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Darlene. For those on the call, welcome. And the one thing Debbie didn't say that is very important is that I'm a Cape Brettoner. So this morning, I practiced my fiddle. I had oat cakes. I had the oat cake on pottery from PEI. I kissed the cod, well, tuna. So I do live in Ontario, as Debbie said, but I'm a Cape Brettoner at heart. I go to the Gaelic College every year and live in residence for fiddle. I go home fairly often. I have a cottage down there. But so I love this. I have, you know what, I'm just, I'm getting a bit personal here, but I've spoken, as Debbie knows, across North America, and I teach in the States at the International Event Management School. But this session today, I thought I'm with my people. So I love it because we all get the value of community and the value, not that others don't, but for me, and I literally did practice my fiddle before I started. I'll just a little bit. I do teach at the International Event Management School. That's in the States. So that's a 2-year program. So I do work for the City of Ottawa, and then separately I do teach at the school. I'm also on the executive of the Canadian Folk Music Awards. And the reason I share that is because just to show you the diversity, and I chaired Stewart Park Festival, which is it's a festival by donation. We get about 28,000 people there. I will tell you, we've had Natalie McMaster, we had Matt Anderson. So we're true to our East Coasters, but we get a lot of people. And I'm sharing that because I want to really talk about the diversity and that how it plays into succession planning. In terms of the City of Ottawa, you can appreciate, because we are the nation's capital, I've been involved in everything from the royal visits to, Remembrance Day, to the community festivals, which of all of them, prefer. I've been involved in writing bids to bring in, if I think of like FIFA games or various things. So it's pretty diverse. But all that to say, everything that I've mentioned, we need succession planning. So even at this school where I teach, we're all getting older, so to speak, and we're looking at succession planning and what students are we seeing in our classes that could take over. I'm the only Canadian that teaches there at that school, and I say that because there's a gentleman from Australia. There's 7 of us that are the props for there, and we go there once a year, in January, because they have the students have stuff to do throughout the year to deliver to us. But it's great because it truly is international. So if anyone needed information on an event somewhere else, let me know. I thought I would kick off, given that this is being hosted by Newfoundland. I thought I'd start with a trivia question. Deb, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what famous New Year tradition in Newfoundland involves dropping a giant object at midnight? Newfoundlanders can't answer it because I'm trying to educate everyone else on what Newfoundland does.
I have no idea.
Do you know, Darlene? Oh, well, I don't see anyone writing in. So it's the giant cod drop in St. John's. Unless it hasn't continued, but that's what I've been told. That's one of the big ones.
That's
So
interesting.
that is, and I have some other trivia we'll get to after if we need to. I also, when I talk about the East Coast, I also, if NEAT is on here, I want to welcome them. They are at Timmins, Ontario, and I've checked your website and stuff, and it's quite amazing the stuff that they're doing as well. So, so today we're going to talk about succession planning. Succession planning is so important, and we all know it. Whether it's a volunteer succession planning, or whether it's, for example, municipal government and staff that work in events, that succession planning is key. So I don't know, Deb, do you want me to just kind of keep talking, or do you want to do questions for? Okay. So we know that with succession planning, really the purpose of that is we want to make sure we have a transfer of knowledge. So we remove any barriers for there being gaps. If you think of a festival and the amount of money that is spent, somebody's wanting to get in, Deb, the amount of money and the grant programs for festivals, we need to ensure that those festivals, whether it's a municipal event or whether it's a private sector, we need to ensure that there is that transfer of knowledge, so there is no gap. So the event goers shouldn't see like, oh, it's new people this year, the event has changed. So that's key. You want to preserve the knowledge, and we want to make sure there's leadership capacity. So I always look at, as I mentioned with the students, but also with volunteers, is to get to know your volunteers and look at their skills. And I'll talk about that in a bit. So the framework for succession planning really is you want to identify your key roles. What are the critical roles? So if you think of, finance, if you think of logistics, those key roles, you want to make sure you have succession planning set up for them. You want to also document your processes. That is key. And it's, in terms of documenting, you want to make sure they're updated. So typically after an event, you do a debrief, and then it's, shows where you need to improve or make changes for the following year. What's important there is that document have the changes within it. So it's not just sitting on a shelf and, someone comes into the role and the document's dated 5 years ago and it hasn't been updated. So it's a task for sure, but it's much needed. You want to make sure you, as I mentioned, you have the key positions, and you want to have key people in those positions. And, through my experience is that there are a lot of people out there who want to be in key roles in festivals and events. And I will say that a festival, we all know what a festival is, but for those who are here from municipal government or federal government, whatever, we know that an event can also be a funeral of a like, especially in Ottawa, it could be a dignitary that passed away. I remember years ago, we had an officer that was shot, and he passed away. But we had 10,000 police officers coming across Canada. And so you can appreciate we needed our volunteers, but part of that is we had respectfully a bank of volunteers that we had been training. So that's the key to succession planning as well, right? Because we weren't just doing a raw call to say, hey, volunteers, come help us. We continually train volunteers for emergency needs within our city. It might not be a sinkhole, for example, but it could be an event. So I always make that distinction because festivals are fun, but there are times that we have to deal with things that, are very unfortunate. And we want to make sure we have the right people in place for that. And you want to also have a backup plan, and you want to make sure you have emergency coverage. I always say, and Deb's heard me say this 1,000 times, like, what are you going to say at the inquest? So if something happens at your event, again, festival event, if something were to happen there, if somebody was, hurt or whatever, and there was an inquest, what are you going to say? You want to say that you had the right people in place, the people were trained, they have experience, and typically you want them to have been involved in the festival. And maybe they started as a volunteer at the front gate and they worked their way up, which is great. It could be a retired paramedic that comes on as well, but always make sure you can answer the inquest questions. Years ago, there was an inquest, the Blues Fest. There was a, this is quite a while ago, but Cheap Trick, Debbie will remember, Cheap Trick was on stage, and I was there. We were there because we city staff, although it was a festival, we do go to the events as well to make sure the logistics and the buses, like everything's running. But a windstorm came, and at that time they weren't really doing the wind service in terms of that's where you can go on and you pay a certain amount of money each year, and then somebody will watch the weather close to your event. That's really increased, partly because of what happened at Blues Fest. But so Cheap Trick was the band. Someone in the band was hurt, was seriously hurt. So there was an inquest, and the inquest, although it was a private sector event, the municipality also had to answer questions. So I'm getting a bit deep into that stuff, but that's the importance of succession planning, is you have people who have transfer knowledge. If I think of at a municipal level, if you're bringing someone in to be your event lead, you want to make sure they know the risk strategies at the city and they know the compliance at the city as well. So that's the framework. And why does it matter? It protects the organization. It protects the knowledge, again, whether it's private or public sector. It's the best way to have a smooth transition is to have that succession plan so someone can step in. Because sometimes people have to leave before the event happens. Maybe it's illness, maybe it's whatever, but it's always good to have someone who is shadowing. Typically they're aware and they're always, what I would recommend, again, private or public, you have someone who is your lead, but you have someone who you can count on, that if you, for whatever, can't make it, they have an understanding of what that event is supposed to be, the intent of the event, and what the compliance matters are with the event. That does reduce risk, and it does strengthen long-term sustainability if we have a proper succession plan in place. There's different types of a succession planning, which I talked about, and that was emergency and interim planning. That is key for any event. You know, I can't stress that enough. I will tell you, when I started volunteering for the Perth Festival, I looked at their emergency plan, and there was a committee of 12, and I was the new chair. And the plan was old. It was like 15 years old. And when I looked at it, I thought, this is not a good plan. When I spoke to the emergency officer, the comment was, people know where to go. It's not a big issue. It's a small town, right? But that doesn't work. Always think of the inquest. You want a planned leadership transition. So there's various roles, but from a leadership transition, you want to make sure you're planning for that, because so in the private sector, for example, you want to make sure that leadership role, the person coming in, is someone who can go and talk to the municipality, who can go and talk to government officials or the MPs if they're seeking grants and whatnot. And from the municipal level, you want to make sure it's someone who is comfortable talking to councillors, who's comfortable, going out there and getting the volunteers, but is not afraid to go to the mayor's office and say, no, we can't do this for whatever reason, or we can. So those skills are really critical. You want to make sure you have a volunteer succession pipeline. And the first steps would be to have a project management. Project management is key. I believe we all know that. That keeps you accountable. It identifies your timelines. But someone who can do that is so valuable, who has project management. You want someone who can oversee budget. You want someone who can oversee contract negotiations. You want someone who's good with sponsorship. You want stakeholder engagement and crisis response. Those would be your critical areas if you're planning an event. And I recognize there's some, folks on here who may have been involved in event planning for, 5 years, 20 years. You have to have these types of skills on your committee. What I find sometimes, and I do speak, as I say, like within North America, but I find what's happened is people will say, not all, but some will say, well, Joe Smith is stepping down from the festival, but his brother wants to come in and volunteer for the festival on the committee level. So the strategic level, right? But maybe that's, his brother can be a great guy, but you need a skill. So I can't stress enough, don't give up the skill you need because it's someone you like or because they're good in the community, whatever. You need to have that base, because typically with festivals, there's accountability. And when you're writing grants, one of the grants will also ask you, who are your members? And they want the bio. So you want to show their skill, not just their skill that they're on the committee, but they have background. So that's key in your succession planning as well.
Hey, Dolores, I have a question for you
Sure.
about when you were talking about planning. Um, an event in Ontario where there was a big it was a firework. There was fireworks, and it had nothing to do with the people participating in the festival, but it had to do, the fireworks backfired and ended up sending the operator to the hospital, and the fireworks never happened that night. Are those kind of the succession planning, like the planning that you're looking for in emergency? I mean, we always think about like the stage and the crowd, but there's other things happening in the back end.
There's so much, you're right, Deb, but there's so much happening at the back end. When I first took on, so I'll just back up a second. I used to be the manager of bylaw services at the City of Ottawa. So you can appreciate with that, there's people coming in for a lottery license or coming in for noise exemption, liquor license, all that stuff. So what I thought was, and then we would send them, like for their fire permit, we would send them, to the other side of town. So we created Event Central. It took me 2 years to get it to council, but we got it through. And that whole Event Central, it meant that any event coming into the city had to come through it was at one point of contact. And the other thing I did is I made sure we created SEAT, which is a special event advisory team. So on that team, we have someone from police, fire, paramedics, transit, marketing, communications. And that's different. That's in the city. So you can say, yeah, it's easy to do because we're all government workers and, you just put your team together. But the value of that is that when a festival comes to us, they're meeting with the same people at the city. So because what we found at first, for example, police would send someone like a different person to the meetings. And I and others, we felt strongly that if you want to build community for your festivals, if you want them to feel comfortable coming to the city so that we're, because people are like, oh, the city just wants to take our money. We all hear that. I work at the city, but that's not true, right? So we wanted to set everyone up for success. So I went to the fire chief, or the chief of police, and I said, we need the same person so that we can build relationships. So that's how we created SEAT. And the festival organizers, whether they were like a new organizer or a festival that's been happening for 20 years, they would come in and they knew every year they were seeing the same paramedic lead, the same fire, the same, whatnot. So it works really, really well. It has been recognized internationally, the model, but aside from that, the point is you need to, so you have the city folks, but private sector, they need to have skills around the table as well. So if, who's ever going to work with the emergency planning people, they should have skills in emergency management. They should have training in emergency management. Because very often what I find is that level of training doesn't take place. It's because it's everyone's volunteers. And it happened here in Perth, but we got training because it's not fair to put it on the person. And in terms of succession planning and retention, people want training, right? Like some people, they come in and they're like, well, I was a retired paramedic, so maybe I could do the emergency plan, but let's get them the training. So that's key to succession planning as well.
There's a question here from a CDSP, I don't know the name, CDSP officer in Richmond County. In smaller rural communities where key skill sets may be limited, or those who have those skill sets are high demand, volunteering for multiple boards, orgs already. Do you have any tips to capture, recruit specific skill sets for those identified roles? And it's hello, Cape Breton.
Oh, hey. I do. So what we did here, and I'm going to use Perth as an example, right? So Perth is a population of 6,000 people, right? And it's very small town, obviously. It's rural community. So to your point, so what I did is there was a group of 12. Like they're wonderful people, but as some started to step down, because some of them had been there for like 25 years, and respectfully, they just didn't want to change it. Oh, we've done it this way and all that. And they looked at me, honestly, it's like, oh, she's the city girl coming in because I just moved here. But I'm, to the point, I'm from Cape Breton. I totally get it. It's small town and we need to make sure that. So what I did is I went out, I asked the group, do you know anyone? Like somebody was leaving. We need someone who knows emergency. We needed someone who knew emergency planning. And so what I did as I talked to the fire chief and I said, do you know anyone that would be interested? I also went to the not-for-profit organizations and I had coffee. I do a lot. Actually, I do tea, but they say do coffee to be cool, but I do tea. But I would talk to those groups to say, do you know anyone who would be interested in joining us who has the training, who has an interest in emergency management? And it worked. We did get some people, and we have an emergency plan was done, but it's getting out there and as a chair, for example, or a municipal worker, you're not alone. Like there's communities out there, just tap into them and they'll find people for you. And I know I'm making it sound easy. It is a bit of work, but they'll find people or post it on your social media. Like, hey, you're interested in emergency planning, come join us. And we work to get them some training in emergency. Typically you want people who have the background in that. So you'd reach out even to the retired, like RCMP, they have a site you can go to, the police. Join those and they want to be involved. And sometimes it makes them feel good, right? Because they know it. So they're coming to the table as like, yes, I know this stuff, right? So there's ways to do it for sure to network. And I totally get it. I mean, the other one is budgeting. We had there was a budget and it was, it was on a Word document, but it wasn't, and I'm not criticizing, but it was just, every year it was a challenge the way the budget process was done. So when the next person stepped down, we looked for someone who had a financial background, and we got someone. So I hope that answers your question. Does that answer?
Oh, Danielle. Her name is
Danielle.
Danielle.
Does that answer?
Asked that.
Yes, thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I will say, as I'm going through this stuff, and I recognize we're kind of limited for time, but feel free to reach out to me because I can show you some of the strategies. Also strategies, at the school, like those folks are coming from different countries. We learn so much from them, and I can take questions to them. I can introduce you to those folks. So just always know I'm available after this call. So we also, marketing and communications is key. Like you need someone who knows marketing comms. Who's going to deal with the media at your event? You have to have someone who has some training in that. You can have a really good writer. So that's your comms person. But marketing and comms, although there's interdependencies, they're two different strengths, right? So you want to make sure you have someone who can do the marketing and the comms. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's not. I had a person come on our committee a couple of years ago now, but she worked in the federal government in comms. And when she came on, she's like, oh yeah, but when I got to the marketing piece, respectfully, she didn't know marketing. Like she didn't know how to tap into the radio stations and the language which she used and whatever. For her, when she realized kind of the breadth of marketing and comms doing both, it was too much because she works full time. And that's the other thing with succession planning, right? Very often we have people who are doing full-time jobs and they're volunteering. So that's, you have to keep that in mind because you can't put too much on someone's plate. And at the municipal level, I always say people do not understand what's involved in event planning. It's like respectfully at the municipal level, like at the city, we ended up getting a team. And the one trick I will tell anyone, if anyone's here from municipality, is track your overtime so that when you go to council looking for more staff, you can show how much, because with event planning, it's not a 9-to-5 job, right? So,
right.
And the other is you want someone for partnerships and sponsorship. Those are they're your key roles, and a volunteer coordinator.
Have you, there's somebody posted in here, Tammy did. I started to put into ChatGPT what to do in this situation. Have you ever done that? And what has your, because chat isn't always 100%. So what's your experience on that, or your feeling on that?
So in terms of using ChatGPT for succession planning?
No, just questions. I mean, that was Tammy. Tammy may want to, who's hugging her dog right now.
Oh, hi, Tammy. Hey, I have my dog here too.
Unmute and ask that question.
Oh, actually, I was trying to turn it into a joke because I've always wanted drones in Gros Morne. And so I started to put it in. I was like, oh no, drones over water. That's what I want. So it came up as the third. I mean, it gives you just like a 1, 2, 3. The first one was just safety first, how to address it calmly, emotional energy reset. I mean, I haven't read it and then drones was the third one, and that's the one I care about.
Okay.
All right, just to clear, are you wanting to have drones at your event?
Oh,
or you want a drone?
like those drones so I probably have an opportunity to go back to China, and we're gonna go see one of those big drone shows. And I've always been obsessed with those. Like, I mean, my husband's an aerospace engineer, so he has some experience with drones too. So we're just having a good time.
Yeah. Hey, no, fair enough. In terms of the drone stuff, I'll just add this to folks. Like, that's a whole nother conversation, because you want to make sure your drones are licensed. Yeah, and the parks.
100%. No, I was just like psycho fancy.
Oh, yeah. No, it's all good. That's good. Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's key. Anyone else have any questions in regard, like ChatGPT? It's good. Like, it is good. I mean, but there's, I mean, it's very high level. I always think, like, it is good, but it might be misleading because it makes it sound simple, and some things aren't that simple, right? Like succession planning, it takes work. You need a strategy, right? It's not just like, we'll get Susie to come in, she'll be this, like, there's a whole plan around that, right? So, yeah. So, the mitigation strategies, you need that risk mitigation, right? So you need a clear emergency roles. This is, again, for these, for succession planning, you need it. What I talked about, the documented processes. Job sharing is key. In the emergency management side, well, maybe I'll tell you what we did also for succession planning. After COVID, we had a hard time getting first aid responders at our festival. And we thought, like this, you can't have a festival without for first aid on site, right? So what we did is we created our own first aid response team. So we did a call out, and we got sponsors for the beds and the defib. So now we have our own first aid team. And that was easy to recruit, because there was nurses in the community and stuff who they were like, yeah, I'd love to do this. They got training and everything. Mind you, they were nurses, but that was just, sometimes it's just what appeals to people, right? And getting the message out there. And then you have to look at your high risk roles, which is your emergency planning and logistics. You need solid people in there, and you do want people who have knowledge of the festival and people who have had some training, and not just, they come in September because the person stepped down in August. You need to really plan it out. If you're planning on someone's leaving the festival, I would recommend like 6 months before, they should tell the chair or whoever, and then you bring someone in to shadow them throughout the festival or the event, because that's key. That's where you get those little nuggets that you kind of don't think of when you're documenting something. So that would be key. You want to build a talent pipeline. So you want to look at mentorship programs, and you can tap into the youth for the mentorship programs, because they want some youth, they want to be mentored. Obviously, they want to do their 40 hours. So if you did a grade 12 student, and you might think, well, they're not going to, run a festival, but they can be a volunteer at your festival, and they want mentorship, and it looks good on their resume. And seniors. There are a lot of seniors out there. I will share this with you, that are very skilled in various things. They could be, retired, whatever, in their profession. Go to the senior centers and talk to the seniors. A lot of seniors don't know, I shouldn't say they don't know, they don't think of volunteering and bringing their skill to the table until you go there. So I think Debbie heard me say this before, is I went to a seniors group and I played cards. I played Crazy Eights. So down home, you guys would know what that's about. And I just talked to them and said, hey, and there was this one gentleman, and he was a retired accountant, and we needed a finance person. And I talked to him. I said, we would love to have, whatever. And then he came to a meeting just to see if he'd liked the group, and he came on, but he wouldn't, he said to me, he would never have thought of that. So it is a lot of networking to get out there. Even on the municipal side, like what I did with the city, is we still go out to these groups and we're looking for people. For the succession planning also, we set up emergency volunteers, so that if there was an emergency, they had vests, or they just have a t-shirt, whatever, as long as they have some signage, get them training, and then they come out, and if there's an emergency, they're part of our emergency plan as well.
When you say good out there, do you Are you saying like you as the chair of the festival doing it all on your own, or have you got a team going out there and doing that?
Yeah, we all go out.
Okay.
And honestly, Deb, it could be as easy as literally that, like, I passed the Legion. I had never been in the Perth Legion. I mean, I haven't lived here. I lived in Ottawa for years, right? And I thought I'm going to pop in. So I just popped in and talked to people. And then the other committee members do as well. And in Ottawa, we do. In Ottawa, we do a lot of networking. We have community associations. You just pop in, talk to them. It's because you can post that you need people, but the human contact is always better, right? So
I've always found that, I've sent things out too, and the key is always reaching out and asking, like face to face or on the phone. Yeah.
And the key to the succession planning is that when you bring the folks on, not that this is not done, but you all want to respect them for their skills.
Correct.
Right. That's what people want. Like if they're an accountant, they want people to know they're an accountant, and they want to be trusted for what they're suggesting in the meetings. Like that is part of succession planning as well. You want shadowing opportunities, which is what I mentioned before. That's key, because some people might do shadowing and then realize that's not for them. So that's why I say, like, it should be 6 months. I would even do a year out. When I took over as chair for the Perth Festival, I actually shadowed the person from September until July. So they did an ad in the paper. I was new to the community, and I saw this ad and I was like, oh, this would be great. I didn't know anyone in Perth. And but I talked to the chair, and he said, well, I'm stepping down after this festival. So I stayed with him for the year, and it was great. I got to know the community and the community. You want to have cross training as well. And I can't say enough about senior opportunities and family opportunities. Because people, if they can bring their families along, typically for succession planning. And I know succession planning is someone steps down and someone steps in, but you want to have that, transfer of knowledge, and you want to provide opportunities, right? So if, Shirley's going to suddenly go on the committee or take over a certain volunteer spot, well, she can bring her daughter. Those are important things, right? We have a lady that comes from Quebec every year for the festival, and she brings her 2 children, and we make sure there's opportunities there for the 3 of them to volunteer. They love it. They book a hotel room, they stay. She said it's her time with their kids. So
can I give a story about succession planning with us?
Yeah.
So we were looking at doing our annual conference up north, up in the Sioux, I think it was. And we didn't reach out to one of our members who had been around for so long and had run a festival up there. And when she found out, she called us and she just said, love to have it, but you got to really take a look at the financial impact it's going to be on you, because it's not an easy place to get to.
No.
And if we had her on the team, or if any of us had thought of calling her even for advice, that may not have gotten, we just would have probably, we would have been able to make a different decision. So it was interesting, right?
It's very interesting.
To really reach out to those in the past who know what's going on.
And you want diversity, right? Like, to your point, Deb. And I think it's also important to look at, like, for example, in Ottawa, we have a lot of new Canadians, and they want to get involved, and they're they have a lot of education, right? For the most part, and get them involved, and they're going to be with you for a while. Typically they'll be with you if they feel part of the community. But I believe the key to succession planning is how you treat the people, and you hone into their skills. It could be an accountant who really is interested in emergency planning, right? Or it could be, the farmer. I have a farmer next door, right? It could be the farmer who's interested, but he wants to learn a new skill. So just open those opportunities for them. But yet, if we need wood, we know where to go, right?
Yeah. Or hay bales, whatever.
Yeah. And you want to do professional development plans and job descriptions. Most of this is probably all volunteer, and it sounds like a lot of work, but if you get that infrastructure in place, it makes it so easy. You have the job description. Here's the job description, right? It saves it, because then people will be interested because they know what's expected of them. I wanted to, I'm just kind of going through this, and then knowledge transfer tools, as we know, there's operational tools, you have to have your event master plan. You should have the onboarding for volunteers, if that's key. And you do your debrief with volunteers, again, update that, and what works in onboarding, what doesn't work in onboarding. And the debrief, I always say the debrief is key to the inquest. I know it sounds awful, but you want to make sure you've documented all that, right? And checklists and timelines. I wanted to talk a bit about like volunteers in private sector and municipal staff, just to kind of give you a sense of what they're looking for. So for succession planning, they're looking for short-term and seasonal, sometimes volunteers, somewhat long-term. Like I'm 5 years with the festival. But some people on the committee are there 15 years, but some people just want to come in for a year. And I think, if you're doing a large festival and you're putting a committee together and someone comes in and says, I just want to do 1 year, I don't think that's who you want on your committee, because the whole point of that committee is to have that's the governance, right? So you need to have longevity there for people that are going to be on, and make sure you ask those questions. Volunteers, like we have 120 volunteers for our festival. They come in, they're there they're fantastic. They come in, do the weekend shift, and they're gone. But if you're looking at strategy and grant writing and that, you need some folks with that want to be around for a while. They're typically for the community events or the large festivals, the volunteers are motivated by purpose, by community and connection. They want, like for me, for example, I didn't know anyone in Perth. I wanted to meet people. So I thought, okay, I know how to do events. So I joined the group, right? So for municipal staff, what is nice about that is there's consistency all year. And typically with the municipality, like we put a bylaw in place, a special event bylaw. So we have an infrastructure there that it really speaks to what can and cannot be done in terms of the requirements. We do MOUs, so what's expected of the city. I would do MOUs also, like with Perth Festival. We'll do an MOU if we're partnering with anyone to look at, okay, what is our expectation? What is their expectation? No one's paid at like the Stewart Park Festival. We're all volunteers. We put a lot of work in, but it's important to have what is the expectation of them, right? When they're coming in, especially if you're doing a call out for people, at least have some type of job description. And with the municipal side too, it's important I mentioned risk management and governance. That typically is the role, is to be involved in that. Sometimes it depends on the municipality, but like there are grant writers within the corporation, typically, depending if it's a small, like in town of Perth, there wouldn't be. So, but that's just where the difference is. And some people, I want to be fair to municipalities. People say, oh, it's easy for municipalities to get volunteers. It's not. Some people don't want to work with municipalities in terms of, they think, oh, they have staff, they don't need us, but they do. Just like the festival, the community events need volunteers as well. And the succession planning. At a municipal level, the succession planning is really important as well, because you want to make sure if the lead for events at the municipality or federal government, whatever, is leaving, there should be job shadowing there for a year. You want to make sure everything's documented. Again, the shadowing is really important. Like, because all those relationships, whether it's with, like I'll use municipal level with council, like I have relationships with counselors because I had to for events, but someone else coming in, they need to shadow for a bit so you can do the introductions and but that doesn't take a week. That would take at least 6 months, in my opinion, right? You need at the city as well, you should have your succession planning. You should have a risk coordinator as well. With us, it was SEAT, the special event advisory team. And I can share all that information with folks if you're looking for information. I also, as Debbie's aware, I have what I call the circle of stakeholders, whether it's if I'm doing the event in Perth, whether I'm teaching, or whether I'm with the city of Ottawa, I have a circle of stakeholders. And literally when I'm planning something, I always make sure, who do I need? Like a municipality, you need to make sure you let the hotels know then about the event. You need to let the taxi, the company know. All those stakeholders are very important at the municipal level, because the city, they need to let them know. From the private sector, they need to let them know as well, because you want to link. So if you're a festival, you want to link with the taxi industry, you want to link with the media, go have those cups of coffee and link with them. But sometimes they get missed because they're not like just a visual. I'm more visual, so I always have a visual it's a circle, right? And I say, okay, yeah, I've checked off all of them, and it's key. And that with your succession planning as well is networking is important, but your network can also bring talented skills to your the who want to be interested in you. You want it with the key role also for the with your volunteers for succession planning is you want team leads and you want supervisors throughout the festival. Who are the supervisors? And you want to train them so they're going to stay. I mean, also, we all know this with volunteers and succession planning, the key is train them, be nice to them, do debriefs. Like it's how they're treated or they'll leave, right? But I will add, you need the right skill at the table. You want recognition and retention. You want early identification. I spoke about this earlier. If you see volunteers within your organization and you see they have leadership skills or specific skills that you might need, start mentoring them right away. Invite them to some of your meetings for the planning. Because again, I'm thinking like there's some volunteers who are only there for the weekend event. But if you see those skills, bring them into your meetings, invite them. We meet once a month. Would you like to join our meeting? Because I see you have some skills here that we could use around the table. And you want to build the pipeline, which is to recruit teams early. That's key. You want to encourage returning volunteers, and that's through your retention, and that's through like your thank you events, and check in with them throughout the year. What I find is some festivals, and I get it because we're all volunteers, but they'll have their event and they don't check in with their volunteers throughout the year. That is part of succession planning, is to check in with them, send them a Christmas card, just say, hey, the committee is, we've done this. They love it. We're going to meet, let's say, I'm going to say like Saturday at 2:00 at the coffee shop, which we've done. Let the volunteers know we have 120 volunteers, but hey, does anyone want to join us? We miss you guys. Come see us. And they just pop in. Not all of them, but some pop in. So that's part of succession planning as well, because they feel they're part of your community. You want to recognize the contributions of the volunteers. And for that, I would even highlight some. And I would do testimonials that you would put on your website. You could do a testimonial in a card that you're sending as a thank you card. Your social, like all of your social media stuff is to acknowledge the work that the folks are doing. The staff pipeline, this is when I say staff, because some festivals have paid staff and also there's government staff, as I mentioned. So you want cross-training across, you want to make sure there's cross-training across departments. So again, in Ottawa, we have our seat, but because we're such a tight group, we all know what everyone's role is. So I know for the bus system, what they're going to be talking about for festivals. I would never speak on their behalf, but if someone new came in, at least I would have, like we would be able to help each other kind of thing. So the cross training is important. And shadowing opportunities, which I mentioned earlier, they're key. Some people, as I say, when they're shadowing, they might decide they just don't want to do an event. And it's also important with who you're putting them with to shadow. And I say that respectfully because you don't want to put them with someone who's just really quiet and not excited or not engaging. You got to make it fun for them, right? So, you want professional development pathways and you want to identify some of them. You can work with your municipality. So if it's a private sector event, I would encourage you to talk to your municipality and see how can you help us with their volunteers or their opportunities at the city? Because the city has they have some events, but they also have some programs, right? That we could work together on. And you want, as I mentioned, the clear documentation on ownership. I'm just going to go through here. I'm conscious of time, Deb. You want your volunteer handbook, which we know that's succession planning. And one might think, well, because the more you can feed folks, like in terms of knowledge and expectations, they'll stay longer. But they don't want to come into an organization that's not organized. So that's key in succession planning. You want the how-to rule guide. You want the run a show schedule. What we do at our festival is we have our event template. So volunteers can look at that and they know every year, like we change it up throughout the year, but you have a schedule and we don't move away from that schedule. So right now I can tell you the schedule, for the most part, for next July. So volunteers can look at that. The committee, they know, okay, the artistic director, when he's booking, he knows he only has these windows because we have to schedule the volunteers. And the volunteers love it because they know now what they're going to be working, so they can plan their family holidays versus, in May, finding out what they're going to be volunteering for in July. So that template is key, and I can send that out if anyone wants that. You want to do checklists and quick references also in terms of, who you're bringing in. But we always it's also nice just to send e-cards to thank people. And it's also nice to, if the mayor is at your event for succession planning, I always make sure the mayor meets as many volunteers as possible, because I think that's key. Like, people want to feel part of the community. And it's not a political thing. It's really just to say, hey, they're important. I want you to meet them because they contribute to this festival. And really, it is about making people feel good about their contributions. You do a post-event debrief, which I mentioned. What I would say for that is, yes, you have a committee, or your organizing committee, whether it's municipal, whether it's government or private. You do your debrief, but make sure you do a debrief. And you can do a survey. People do surveys. I get it. It's, you do no more than 5 or 7 questions. But I would do more in depth with the volunteers as well. If you want to do that debrief with them, what I do is meet with them and hey, let's talk about this. What were the issues? How can we improve for next year? Maybe there was no issues, right? I'm not a big survey person, I'll be honest with you, because I always think with surveys, it's the value of the question in the survey, but one-on-one contact to me I think it's key to anything. That's the East Coaster in me, but that I do believe that's the key. So then for transition and mentorship strategies, you want to pair departing leads. So again, if you're working in government, you want to make sure you're pairing up someone who has knowledge of events. I don't know if there's any municipalities on here. I think there might be, based on the list I saw, but I've seen municipalities where somebody leaves and then they bring someone in who has no idea about events. They don't like events, and they're just put into the job. That's not the festival organizers in the private sector who are contributing to the economic development of your town or your city deserve better. And I say that respectfully. It could be someone that has no idea about events, but at least send them to the FEO conference, make sure they get the training, because otherwise it's going to affect the festival, who could potentially, succession planning may not exist anymore because they're going to feel that the town doesn't appreciate what they're doing, right? So, and then the other thing, I know I said it already, but it's for the government side, it's key to track how much time is put into these events, and that's how you educate your mayor and council on that. The other thing we did, I'll just give you a little tip, is, so say if a community, if they need a generator, and we lend them a municipal generator, we track all that. So when the event organizer, and it's happened, I'm sure we've all seen it, they go to the council and say, their councilor, we get nothing from the town, blah, blah, blah. We can say, and they'll call us, the councilor's office. We say, no, we lent them our $5,000 generator. That's a value of in kind. So we track it all. So it does help, at the municipal level, it does help to be able to say, no, we're helping. So that's been beneficial. It's not succession planning, but it does show that the municipality is contributing beyond the license, fees and all that stuff. You want to maintain the shared drive. You want to have all that information in a shared drive that everyone can access. You want to hold pre-event knowledge sharing sessions, which are, so before the event, I talked about debrief, but you can also, we bring our volunteers together about a week before the event just to talk about, we go over everything. They have, by then they would have had their emergency planning. And even if they've been a festival volunteer for years, they still come to this planning and they love it because it's their little gathering. We bring in pizzas, etc., and we go over the emergency plan and we work with them. And then we ask them if they have any concerns going into the weekend, and all that's documented. And we do peer coaching as well. You want to do for your volunteers, you want to do, as I mentioned, appreciation events. I'm always surprised at how many people want a volunteer certificate. It's amazing. They love them because they put them, there's people that say, you know what, I have a wall in my house and I have for the last 15 years all the certificates on the walls. So those little things are important, not that you have to do them, but you could be asking your volunteers, what's important to you, so that throughout the year you think of us Maybe it's a pin, like maybe, the little pins people put on, but those are important, and they want growth opportunities. So again, going back to someone coming in volunteering, look at see what skills they have, talk to them about, mentorship, talk to them about, are you interested in something else? Like, hey, I heard you were, like I said, a retired paramedic. Are you interested in the emergency management? He could say, or she could say, no, but I'm interested in something totally off, like building stages. Yeah, okay. So then you move them over to the person who is responsible for building stages, and they want to learn from that. For staff at municipal level, in terms of succession planning, and I say that because some people could think, well, municipal staff, if they just want to leave, they're going to leave. If people love their job, they're going to stay and they're going to contribute. So you want to, at a municipal level, you want to make sure that there's a clear pathway. So if someone's doing events, and it doesn't have to be the manager of events. It could be someone who's brought in, who's, they're learning, they're moving, they want to move up. So you want to make sure you have a clear pathway, because if they feel at some point they can move up in the organization because of the work they're doing, because events is a lot of work. We all know that. It's not a Monday to Friday job. You want to make sure you have a clear pathway. You want to make sure it's a fair distribution of work. Very often what I see is, like if I'm talking to other cities, whether it's in Canada or in the States, there's an assumption that events are just going to happen. So you don't need the staff. You need the staff. So make sure you have that fair distribution. And I will tell you, as a manager, it was hard for me to get staff. Really, it was, because they're like, Blues Fest is going to happen whether the city's involved or not. No, if you want it done properly. And that's where I kept track of all the overtime. And I will tell you, I used it to go to council, and it was like, whoa, this is a lot of work, right? So it kind of changed the game a bit. And you want ongoing skill development, whether it's the private or public sector. People want to learn. Like, people in their 80s still want to learn. And there are people in their 80s who volunteer and they still want to learn things. So I would say the next step for the festival organization is to identify roles for succession planning. Look at that critical list that I gave. Like, do we have people who could step into those roles? If not, we need to start bringing people in. They can start as volunteers. If you see them, bring them into your meetings. And you want to review and update the documents that I spoke of. You want to have people trained for backup. So if somebody is not able, if they're sick and they can't make your event, you want to make sure you have a buddy system that someone can step in. And you want to annually review what strengths you need. I call it bench strength. Like, what bench strength? How do you improve your bench strength going into next year? What do you need? And then typically there's a volunteer there that can come in, and in terms of succession planning, if you provide the opportunity for them, again, it's communication, saying, hey, we need someone who knows accounting, we need someone who knows marketing. I'm sure there's people out there in the volunteer pool that you have already, and then bring them onto your committee, and then just work with them. They're learning. It's a wonderful opportunity. Honestly, there's so much skill out there, but it's making people aware that you need the skill. You want to audit the current roles that you have, because maybe the roles that you have, as I mentioned, that's not what you need. Not that you're going to move people off any committee, but either you get them trained in the skill, or as someone steps down, you make sure you bring in that skill. You want to identify gaps, same thing in terms of the leadership. Where are the gaps? And document it, and then really look at, it's all about strategy, like putting a strategy in place for your festival, and again, whether it's private or public, what is the strategy there? And what is the 3 to 5 year plan that you have? And strategies, people say, well, we're going to do a strategic plan, and it gets shelved because events are growing, and also they're critical to any municipality in terms of the economic development and whatnot. I would recommend you work with the municipality to do a strategic plan. If you're a private sector, go to the municipality, ask them to help you. I realize I'm probably making it sound easy because I come from a bigger city, but we did this in Perth. We tapped into some of the resources at the town of Perth because they didn't have a strategy. So I asked if they could work with us, and they did. They were like, yeah, sure. So we have a strategy around that. And the big thing is training, provide opportunity for training. So for example, like paramedics do training, and they do training for festival organizers, festival volunteers, tap into that. They don't charge. Some municipalities won't charge if you're part of a festival. Some municipalities are doing other types of training. It could be on, and I mean this seriously, it could be on cultural diversity. So ask if you can have some of your volunteers sit into that training. Because as we all know, there's more cultural diversity than ever. And how do you engage that group? Well, some municipalities have departments that do that. So ask if they can come and speak at your group, or if you can go train with them or have some people train. So always, and municipalities love events. I mean, some could be but laughing, but they do. It is an economic generator, and that's key. And they recognize it. Festival groups recognize it. So work together and look at what skills are there at the municipal level. That's kind of where I am with that. I can go a bit deeper, Deb. I'm looking at the time. I have too much to say, to be honest.
Are there any other last minute questions for Delores? This was amazing, Delores. Every time I get on with you, I'm educated.